There we go.
Okay, Ted, you're connected. Keep in mind that you'll be letting people in, okay, as they start coming in. And I am done. If you need me, just text me. All right, I'm home. All right.
Gotcha.
Pablo, Pablo, quick question. So is it, do you or Ted, I guess, whoever.
It's my endeavor not to keep you all that long, but I do want to thank each and everyone that has taken the time out to be a part of our meeting on this evening. Of course, I want to thank our chairperson, Laura Spalter, for joining us on tonight. Board members, Julie Reyes and Margaret Della. I also see board member David Gelman with us on tonight. Lee Chong, also thank you. And Aracel, also thank you for coming on and joining us this evening. We want to get started. We've kind of taken an impromptu roll call. So I know that Julie Reyes is here and Margaret Della is here. We're hoping that other board members can join us on this evening. But we want to do is move on and just take a vote, a motion for the approval of our minutes. Has everyone gotten them? So I make a motion to approve
Yes.
minutes. I
I'll
make a
second
motion
it.
to approve. Thank you.
On Ted, with that one correction.
Yes.
My
Yes,
name
with the
is
one, yes,
Margaret.
we have to make a correction. Let it be known in the notes that we're making correction in spelling of Miss Lee Chong's name. We're changing it from C-H-U-N-G to the correct spelling of C-H-O-N-G.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't have a report this evening per se, but I will say that as chairman of the Housing Committee, I am standing behind the people of Ukraine, and we're praying for a quick and peaceful end to the war and the end of Russian aggression. And I would think that we're all on board with that, and we're definitely praying for that nation and its people. And even here, because we know that war affects everyone. There are members of Ukraine here in the United States in New York, and more than likely a part of this community board. So we want to also keep them in our thoughts and prayers and their families. Once again, I'd like to thank Mr. Ricardo Martinez Campos, the acting director of the Mayor's Office to Protect Tenants, for being with us on tonight. We want to take a few moments to discuss the end of the rent moratorium. We know that this is a harrowing time for so many in our jurisdiction. We know that Kingsbridge has the largest number of low-income housing across the board, and we know that they are very highly affected by the end of this moratorium and could be amongst the highest number of evicted persons across the city. So we want to hear from Mr. Campos, Acting Director Campos, on tonight in regards to what protections we have in place. We understand that the Attorney General has some things in place, but we want to hear from the Acting Director and to see what we can do to assist them in facilitating these protections. So at this time, I want to ask Mr. Campos to please come on the line and talk to us.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you everyone for the invite. I'm very happy that you invited me and my office. I want to keep things very conversational. Please, if you have any questions while I'm speaking, because it might be a lot of information, feel more than free to interrupt me and ask the question. And yes, I want to talk to you about the expiration of the evictions moratorium. and all the different protections that New Yorkers have right now, and all the resources that the city has to help tenants navigate these very uncertain times. Just to build on Mrs. Lee's comment about MOPT and where we're coming from, just to correct myself, we were actually created early 2019, but we didn't start operations until late 2019. We were created under an executive order by Mayor de Blasio, former Mayor de Blasio. And by late 2019, we had a small team in the office, and we were already working with other agencies in fulfilling our mission, which is very clear. We were created to make sure that the city's tenant protection resources and efforts were highly coordinated. The creation of a mayor's office to protect tenants, what it does, it brings the tenant at the center of the conversation, so we can create resources and take decisions that are, or that drive a tenant-centered outcome. So basically we work backgrounds and we figure out what is going to be the best for the tenants, and working towards that goal, we start figuring out what are the role of the different agencies and the resources that they have to make sure that those goals are achieved. And I know that that's a mouthful, but it's basically working in coordination, or making sure that agencies are coordinated to make sure that we are delivering for tenants in New York City. So we were created in late 2019. Unfortunately, early 2020, the pandemic hit. And our agenda had to shift dramatically from what we had envisioned that we were going to do programmatically speaking, to a more emergency response type of situation where, of course, COVID became the most important thing. I don't want to stop and talk about the work that we did throughout the pandemic, because I think that is going to be reflected now in the context of the expiration of the evictions moratorium and everything that we're doing right now that's going to help tenants stay in their homes right now. So to put things in context, there were a series of different evictions moratoria that were put in place in New York State, either by the governor or by the Office of the Court Administration, basically the courts that manage housing court. These different eviction moratorium were from executive orders to more administrative procedures, but they all achieve the same goal, which is there is no evictions in New York State and in New York City, right? They all wanted to halt evictions. And throughout the past 2 years, there were different versions of these eviction moratoria. There were some periods of time, particularly at the end of 2021, or I believe actually, yeah, at the end of 2021, there were some gaps where actually eviction cases in court did go through. They were moving through court. But in general, for the past 2 years, New Yorkers have had the opportunity to not be evicted from their homes. There has been protections, blanket moratoria in largely in New York City that protects them. The latest one that was extended by Governor Hochul, I believe in September last year, expired this year, January 15. That's, to put things in context, the last eviction moratorium expired on January 15. What does this mean to tenants? Well, this means the tenants who have right now an open and active eviction case in housing court, that case can continue its process in court. Like the judges can take on the case and they can start having hearings. And yes, tenants, if the proceeding moves on, tenants could face eviction. The judge could rule that an eviction should be executed. But there is many things in place right now in the city that can prevent that eviction from the tenant. I would say the most important thing right now that you all should know, and that I hope you can help me communicate to your constituents, is we still have the Emergency Rental Assistance Program application open. So for the past couple months, the state put together, with help of the federal government, the state put together a program, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, called ERAP. And the website for tenants to apply to ERAP. Basically, with this program, tenants could apply and access for rental assistance for up to 15 months of unpaid rent, during the pandemic. And there were multiple criteria on how to apply to ERAP, but the most important things around eviction protections were if a tenant applied to ERAP, they would get eviction protections. Basically, if they apply to ERAP, they could not face eviction. They could not be removed from their homes until the application was resolved, whether if it was approved or not. In the process of the application being reviewed and resolved, they could not be evicted from their homes. That was the main thing about applying to ERAP. Of course, getting the money is important, but in the meantime, you cannot be evicted. And then the other one is if any tenant received ERAP funds to pay rent, or they were approved the money for ERAP, they would get 1 year of additional eviction protections. So not only ERAP would pay for the rent that was due, but also for a year after that, they would be fully protected from eviction. This is relevant because at some point last year, ERAP closed. They were not receiving applications anymore, but the Supreme Court of New York decided that it was against the best interest of the tenants for this portal to be closed. So the portal and the application to ERAP is still open. Now, important difference. There are currently no funds for ERAP. So if a tenant applies, the application won't move forward because there is no more money left. That was the main argument initially on why the program had to shut down. But if they apply, they will receive eviction protections, right? They will get that eviction protection of until your application is resolved, you cannot be evicted from your home. So right now, what's the most important thing is for all tenants that are eligible for ERAP to apply to ERAP. They will automatically get eviction prevention protections only because of applying for ERAP. That would be the very first thing that I want to communicate to all of you, and that is still accurate. That's still happening. ERAP is still open for tenants. The other side of the coin, which is right now we're looking at what we can do to prevent people to getting to court, but the other one is the reality is that a lot of our tenants are already facing eviction in court. So what tenants should know is that the city of New York is going to give any tenant, regardless of their income and where they live, we're going to give them a lawyer that is going to represent them in court through a program that is called Right to Counsel. That is a program that the Office of Civil Justice under the Human Resources Administration manages. It's a program where we have contracts with many different legal service providers. And through those contracts and under that program, we provide legal representation for any tenant who is facing eviction in housing court. So if a tenant didn't apply for ERAP, it's already in court or had an active case lagging for months before, and they are receiving papers from court and they don't have a lawyer, they should get a lawyer, and we are going to get them that lawyer for free. They just need to reach out to the city of New York so that we can connect them with free legal representation. Tenants should know that 84% of tenants who are represented in court keep their homes. It's a big number, and it's a big shift from the past years from what was happening before Right to Counsel was fully implemented. It's important to remember that now Right to Counsel is fully expanded, so it really doesn't matter what your income is, your immigration status, or where you live in the city. We are going to get you a lawyer. So these two are the main resources that we have right now to help people stay in their homes. Both apply to ERAP, and then the other one is we will give you a lawyer to fight eviction. Around all those resources or main resources, we have other messaging that is really important. Of course, we are afraid that some tenants either will not know about these resources or their landlords will try to take advantage of them. So one of the important things is for tenants to know that illegal evictions are basically are illegal in New York City, are typified as illegal in New York City. So a landlord can't evict a tenant on their own. The only person in New York that can order an eviction is a judge through the court. There is no other way that a tenant is asked or should be asked to leave their apartment. So this is both messaging for landlords and for tenants. Tenants should stay in their homes regardless of what their landlord tells them. If their landlord is asking them to leave because they haven't paid rent, or they are asking them, or they're changing the locks because they haven't paid rent, that is illegal. Tenants should either contact my office or the city's tenant helpline to make sure that we're giving them legal advice, and if needed, connecting them with a lawyer that can represent them. But if landlords are taking action, tenants should call 911. We have worked very 911, where we've worked very closely with the New York Police Department to make sure that NYPD, after the evictions moratorium, they know what to do when facing an illegal lockout. And it's important to know that the NYPD is there to help tenants return in their homes if the tenant, is a tenant in the home, because illegal lockouts are just not allowed. And the tenant can later connect with us. We can give them a lawyer, and the tenant can file an illegal eviction case in court. But at the moment when the legal eviction is happening, it is really, really important that the tenant connects with the NYPD so they can help them stay in their home. So illegal evictions is definitely something that could happen now, mostly that the messaging out there is no eviction moratorium anymore. But it's very important that tenants know that that's illegal, and leaving their home is only something that a judge can order through an eviction order, through actual papers from the court. So 3 things very important, again, summarizing. One is any tenant that needs eviction protections, that is afraid of facing eviction because they have not paid rent for the past year or 2, or their landlord is asking them to leave because they owe rent, it's very, very important to make sure that they are applying to ERAP. And, at the end of our conversation and FAQs, of course, I can share with you what are the ways that we can help them complete applications or connect them with lawyers, right? But that's very important that they apply to ERAP. We have contracts with community-based organizations working in the different boroughs, helping tenants complete the applications. We have our own city system through the city tenant helpline that is also helping people complete ERAP applications. And that's going to give them automatic protections against evictions. On the other side, if a tenant is already facing eviction, they should get a lawyer through right to counsel. And then overall, a tenant cannot be evicted from their home if it's not coming as an official order from the courts, from a judge. So those are the main 3 things that we are sharing with tenants. We understand that many tenants are facing many different situations. Right now, I'm talking about the more generic message of you're a renter in New York City, you are in your home, you are facing eviction or are afraid of facing eviction, this is what you should do. But many of our tenants have vouchers, right? Section 8, city FEPs, they are part of public housing. Like, there is an array of tenancy issues in New York City. So important for all of you to know as well is that my office created in partnership with 2 other offices, we created in the middle of the pandemic a one-stop shop for tenants to get assistance for anything that they need, regardless of the type of tenant they are and regardless of the type of question they have. And that is called, and I've made reference to it already, but that's called the city's tenant helpline. The city's tenant helpline is the one-stop shop for tenants to access to anything that they need regarding their tenancy. So for example, if they want to apply to ERAP, they should contact the city's tenant helpline. If they need a lawyer, they should contact the city's tenant helpline. If they have questions about their lease and don't know how to read their lease or don't know what's happening with their lease because their landlord is telling them XYZ, they can contact the city's tenant helpline. And one of our tenant support unit specialists, which is a unit that's part of a larger mayoral office called the Public Engagement Unit. But one of our tenant support unit specialists is going to call them and answer any questions that they may have. If they need to talk with a lawyer, that specialist is going to case manage the tenant and is going to connect them with a lawyer. If they want to report discrimination against their landlord because it's not accepting vouchers in their home, that tenant support unit specialist is going to work with our Commission of Human Rights. It's going to make sure that a complaint is filed. If that tenant is reporting that the day before they faced an illegal eviction and they really need support from a community organization or my office, that tenant support unit specialist is going to talk to me and the community-based organization and make sure that we take action. So any tenant that needs any type of help, including all the things that I've shared with you, should call the tenant helpline. The best way to connect the tenant helpline is to call 311 and just ask for the tenant helpline. That's anything that a tenant needs to do. We have tenant support unit specialists trained and that are native in all the different languages that we speak here in New York City. So a tenant, when making the request, should feel free to ask anything in their preferred language, and we will get back to them in their preferred language. They could also reach out to the city's tenant helpline through my website. We have a form and they can complete the form, and all those forms, we are reviewing them. We have staff looking at all these things and returning all the calls that we get. So we're ready to help tenants. We're ready to provide all this information. And those, you know, that's the universe of thing that I wanted to share with you in terms of what exists right now. There is no, at least in near future horizon, there is no certainty of an additional evictions moratorium. So I think it's really, really important for tenants to know and leverage these resources, right? To make sure that they, if they are in court, that they can access to a lawyer, or if they're not in court, that they are afraid of facing eviction, that they can still apply to ERAP. And of course, on top of all these things that have to do with eviction, I encourage all tenants, and again, you can share this with your constituents and at large with the community board. I encourage all of them to review the Mayor's Office to Protect Tenants website. We have a lot of information about tenants' rights, spanning from all the different types of issues that a tenant can face, from discrimination to tenant harassment, and all the different resources that we have for each scenario. It's very, very, very complicated to be a renter in New York City. So we've put together many public education campaigns. We put together a public education campaign for right to counsel. We put together a public education campaign for illegal evictions and the expiration of the evictions moratorium. And very soon, my office will be launching a new campaign about general tenants' rights in New York City. Something that is important that you know is that my office is mailing every week. We're reviewing data and we are mailing every tenant that shows up in court. So a tenant that receives a new case in court, my office is mailing them every week, every new tenant that shows up, information about what they should do. Just a postcard, everyone is getting that information. There's many, 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 many touch points in the process of, you know, a tenant's case in court where the city is going to intersect the tenant, right? We always want to prevent things. We understand that navigating the court system in New York City is very difficult. So the first thing is, as soon as that case is filed in court, my office gets that notice and my office sends that initial postcard to the tenant. And then in the different hearings that the tenant is going to have, because an eviction process, you know, takes time, in the different, you know, hearings and touching points, the city of New York will be present there through the different contracts that we have with the community-based organizations to make sure that the tenant, if it's not represented, gets a lawyer. And throughout all the different documentation and you know, papers and documents that they will receive from the courts, they are going to be accompanied by information from the city of New York, sharing with them not only what their rights are, but also all the different resources that we have for them. So that's kind of like the state of things right now in New York City. Again, the evictions moratorium expired already, but we do have resources for preventive, like ERAP, or reactive, like right to counsel, to make sure that people stay in their homes. Those are the things that we should be relying the most right now. As you know, we, I guess, get out of the pandemic and things start to change. Those would be the main things. And always, for whatever reason and for whatever question tenants might have, the city has established channels of communication. Specifically, the city's tenant helpline. Tenants need to call 311, ask for the tenant helpline, and we will answer any questions that they may have. So that's pretty much on my end, everything on my end. I don't know if people have questions. Yes.
Ted, may I ask a question?
Yes, feel free.
Okay. Ricardo, may I call you Ricardo?
Yes, of course.
Okay, thank you. What is the office or the mayor's office doing about the good cause law that they're trying to get passed at the state? Because I don't know if you're familiar with what's going on in the Bronx, and I think it's on Morris Avenue. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but the landlord has refused to renew the lease of a family that's lived in the building for 3 decades because they want to renovate the apartment and convert it into a co-op. So are you dealing with co-op conversion type situations? And where are you at with the if involvement in the good cause eviction law?
I think, yeah. So let me start with good cause eviction. The only thing that I can speak about on good cause is the mayor's remarks on good cause eviction. I think they came like last week. So that's really on the mayor to talk about. My office
I
is
think it
more.
came out of that whole thing with what's going on in the Bronx.
Right. So that would be like the official statement. In my end, my office is more like programmatic policy. We look at specific issues and we make sure that we have an emergency response. But on like state issues, I would fully defer on the mayor and his office, like the mayor's office. Not to confuse with like the larger, exactly, not to confuse with the larger, all the array of mayoral offices like mine, you know. So definitely that would be the official statement. I am not involved on good cause eviction because that's something that he is, you know, being advised on. And my advice, of course, if given, it's very, you know, it's on him. I cannot share that. But what I can tell you on, so trying to answer the second part of your question is the mayor's office to protect tenants does review any complaint or any flag that gets to my office. That's like internal policy. So I might not be familiar with the specific case that you're talking about, but I can help you review the case if you send me the details. So what I can tell you is anything that has to do with tenancy, regardless of where the tenancy is coming from, Section 8, co-op, whatever, public housing, it doesn't really matter. If that comes to me, I will not only look at the case, but we will look at it in a more comprehensive way. So many of the things that we do, for example, are looking at portfolios instead of just buildings. So if you send me a building and say, hey, you know, this is happening in the Bronx, we have a building with like X amount of tenants that are being displaced because they want to do renovation, I have the right connections, both at the state and the city, to make sure that we make a comprehensive look at the building. And I can tell you, hey, you know, this is against the law. We're going to help the tenants. We're going to give them either lawyers to represent them, or we're going to give them connections with a community-based organization to make sure that they know what to do. And on the other side, I am going to do my investigative work. I'm going to look at the building. I'm going to look at the portfolio that the landlord owns and make sure that there is nothing fishy there. Part of the reason why we were created is to send the message out there that the bad practices that landlords have been doing for the past years are not good, are not something that we can just be okay with. And, you know, the most recent example is an illegal eviction happened 2 weeks ago in the middle of the pandemic in Brooklyn, in a property in 1214 Dean Street in Brooklyn, where a landlord tried to illegally evict tenants from their homes, and they actually illegally evicted them. And just recently, last week, we after 2 years of litigation against the landlord, because we took action immediately, after 2 years of litigation, we settled with the landlord and we're taking on the property and we're going to turn it into affordable housing. But that, you know, I'm putting this both because I do want to share that we do stuff around enforcement and litigation. I do want to put in context that all that investigative work might take longer, but it is our idea to send the message out there. So if you have a specific referral and, you know, you want me to take a look at a particular building, just send it along my way. And that is my job. I want to make sure that my office is taking a look at it and that I'm coordinating with the different agencies to see what we should be doing here, besides of what the HCR could be doing or the state attorney general.
Oh, you also mentioned, Ted, is it okay if I continue?
Yes, we want to.
You mentioned discrimination. In all co-ops, when people get interviewed, they can get denied, may get denied. Under current law, the co-op does not have to give a reason as to why they denied the individual family. And if someone suspects that it's discrimination, where can they go? Can they go to your office and say, We
Yep.
believe we've been discriminated against. We have the income, we have everything that is required based on their portfolio.
Yes.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
good to know.
So,
Thank
yes,
you.
send them to me. I really showed if it's a complaint or a referral, let's call it a referral. If it's a referral coming from the board, from your board, I'll be more than happy to get it personal.
No, it's a complaint coming from an applicant who wants to move into a co-op and has been denied by the board, but they're not obligated to give a reason.
Right, sorry,
The
I was,
applicant believes that they've been discriminated.
right, sorry, I was referring to the community board Bronx
Oh,
8.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So, if you want to make the referral to me, just send me an email to my email account. I think Ted or Pablo have my email account, and they also have my assistant's email account. Send me all the information, and just, to give you a little bit more insight on what can happen in these types of referrals about discrimination. We definitely, I don't want to jump and say, oh, this is what's happening. I know very little of the case. I would need to review, but it could be a discrimination case, and it could be a source of income discrimination case. And you don't have to have a voucher to face source of income discrimination. And there is an array of reasons why a tenant could be facing discrimination. And we have laws in place, particularly the Fair Housing Act, that establishes what are the reasons that a landlord could be using to violate the law in terms of discrimination. And we have units taking a look at all of that, from CCHR to HRA SOI unit to HPD. And my office, while my office doesn't have those lawyers in-house, right? We're a very small team. My office makes sure that we're using those lawyers in the other units efficiently. So that's why it's important that I learn about the case. I'm more than happy to review, and we will take a look at it for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Chairperson Swalter, you have your hand raised.
Yes, this has been incredible information. Thank you so much. We will be posting, and we will be putting it on our Facebook and newsletter to get this out. This is the time of year when the board makes up priorities, fiscal priorities to the city for the budget. And I was wondering how we can advocate for this very important program. Is there something specific? And you don't have to answer this tonight, where you feel that funding is needed, and we might explore that as a budget priority for any of these programs. This would fall under expense budget, or maybe just do you deal with other community boards on their priorities, budget priorities ever?
I personally don't, but I do know from other community boards what their priorities might be. I don't know how they put them under the budget and how much they advocate for, but what I can tell you is that the city has different programs already in place through which we funnel money to community organizations and through to community boards, right? And of course the city council does as well. In my experience, most of the things that I hear community boards advocate for is organizing, tenant organizing, right? Making sure that the different buildings, tenant associations, and community organizations that do tenant organizing are well funded. On my end, on the city's end, at least on MOPT's end, we know that we can manage the programs that we have efficiently with the resources that we currently have, and the city agencies are already doing their advocacy work to make sure that those budgets are increased in the ways that they deem fit. But in my experience working with community-based organizations, and particularly with tenant organizers, that might be an area where you as a community board could advocate for. And that's definitely, that's always something where money is lagging. And I'm wearing my city bureaucrat hat, but also I'm thinking as a tenant myself. So it's important that those services are well funded. So I would say that would be an area. In terms of like outreach and engagement, my office was created for that. So what I can tell you is that if you think there is a need in Bronx 8 for more resources to be allocated, and you need materials for tenants to know, pasting flyers on laundromats and bodegas, making sure that we have stuff on Lincoln YC, like on bus shelters and things like that. You just need to send me an email. I'll make sure that our outreach and engagement resources are out there in the community and the tenants know about that. But when it comes to organizing, to me, that's something that I've seen other community boards advocate for, because it's something really important. And, that might be one of those things where the city is like a little stretch on.
Well, I'm glad that your program, the Right to Counsel program, access to lawyers, all that is funded fully for the next year or 2 years. You're funded.
Yeah. So
Good, very good.
Right,
Very
Right to
good.
Counsel, I think Right to Counsel had just a hearing yesterday. And if you want, I can get back to you with like the specifics on what are the fiscal years that it is funded for. But
Oh, that's all right. It was just
Yeah.
very good. We always want to look at the needs. And this is very critical.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
right now the program is it has capacity to help tenants. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Are there any more questions before we move on? We want to take advantage of this wealth of information while we have it. It's very important what we've heard tonight, and we want to make sure that we leave no stone unturned. If not, once again, I want to thank Acting Director Campos for joining us on this evening, for giving us all these fantastic resources. During his dissertation, he had mentioned some resources that is readily available through his office. For those of you that would like, I have a phone number for the Right to Counsel hotline. That number is 718-557-1379. Once again, the Right to Counsel hotline, 718-557-1379. And they will help you to get an attorney. Also, housing court number of 212-962-4795. Once again, housing court 212-962-4795. And we know that the housing court and the civil court, they deal within particular boroughs. So for the Bronx and Manhattan, you have 646-386-5554 or 5555. Bronx and Manhattan is 646-386-5554 or 5555. Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island is 718-262-7185 or 7186. Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, once again, is 718-262-7185 or 7186. We appreciate you, Mr. Campos, and your office once again for taking the time out and addressing this housing staff. We want to thank you, and we will definitely keep in touch with you. As you said, we will be able to correspond with you through email or phone calls, and you will definitely be hearing from us again.
Yes, and I will make sure that Juan from my team sends you a summary of all the things that I just discussed today, with links to important and relevant information, and with the phone numbers that you need to, distribute through your newsletter or any other information that you might need. We have like a blurb, and we'll make sure that you get that.
Got you. Before you go, there are two hands. So Julie Reyes, you want to come on in?
Thanks, Ted. And thanks, Ricardo, for great information. I just wanted to ask Ted, the information that was given this evening, and even Laura, if it's not already on our website, can we do like an addendum or something to the housing booklet that we have on the website? Because it's great information. We could add like a page and something.
Okay, yes, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yes. I think the copy is given to the board office, and then they should be able to work it from there. Julie, let's talk to Kira about that.
Okay, great, because it's just a
On
matter
how
of
to do
just
this
adding the
addendum
information
and
he gave him.
what they
Yeah.
need. Yes, because this is very up, the most recent and certainly on our social media. But it should
Yeah.
be added,
Okay, great.
definitely.
Thanks again, Ricardo.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. And I see David Gelman.
Yes, actually, Julie covered most of what I was going to say. Yeah, I think we should take the flyer from Ricardo and all those. I think there's about 8 phone numbers that you read off. We should put them put that flyer on our webpage as well as in next month's or probably most months newsletters. But it sounds like very good and useful information.
I'm glad to hear that. I appreciate it. Well, thank you everyone for your invitation. More than happy to join you in another session once things change. And feel free to reach out to me or to my office if you have any questions or referrals. That's important. Have a good evening, okay?
Same
Thank
to
you.
you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Have a good evening. Well, we have just heard a lot of information that we definitely look forward to using. Possibly, there were some other people that were suggested to come on this evening, but did not, that are also part of his office. Greta Aiken, who's the manager of enforcement and engagement initiatives, and Juan Venero, he's a special assistant to Mr. Campos. So we want to keep these men and women in mind going forward with any housing eviction issues. No real old business, but I want to jump in now with our new business. Thankful for Dave joining us on tonight because we want to discuss some ideas for our fiscal year 2024 budget. As you heard, there are a lot of things that are moving, some many parts and pieces that are moving in regards to the expiration of the rent moratorium. And one of the things, because there is no money in the ERAP system, possibly using some of our thoughts, we could maybe look for something that we can put in place, either some type of fund or assistance. I didn't hear anything in regards to legal fees because I believe they're all free. But we also know that there are other extenuating things that families have to go through, possibly transportation and going to the courts and things of that nature. So maybe you want to consider that. There was also a request, I believe, by Julie that in this month's review, that where is it? Okay, I have to go back and look. We want to keep in mind that we were dealing with in our last meeting the replacement of boilers in Marble Hill and Fort Independence, as well as we were told in regards to a direct hot water line that is in the process of being installed in the buildings. So we also want to keep those things in mind. We want to keep in mind the replacement of any fire doors that need to be replaced, any walkways that need to be done on the grounds or around these different developments. And let's see. Yeah, and does anyone else have any other requests or any other ideas that we can float for this new fiscal year?
Ted, may I speak?
Yes, Ms. Chung, go right ahead.
I'm curious. I don't know, and David can tell me. is this for capital or non-capital? Because,
Yes.
what, David?
It's a snarky way of saying it's both.
Okay, that's what I thought.
They're capital budget priority requests and expense budget requests. For some reason, the city seems to use $35,000 as an arbitrary, somewhat arbitrary cutoff between the two.
Oh, then you can't ask questions like, have you had interviews with HPD and NYCHA and said, what would they need to be able to do what we need? Like, add on 2 more housing inspectors. I mean, I'm just throwing that out. Have you at all interviewed any of these agencies to see where they're falling short for Community Board 8? Because that's what I thought was done in past years. At least that's what I recollect. Julie, you've been on the committee for a long time. Isn't that true? No one's.
Well, I don't know if there was any
I'm sorry,
interviews. I know that we had addressed in Marble Hill the need for personnel to monitor security cameras, because after a certain time during the day, there is no one monitoring the security cameras. So that was part of what we had discussed in our budget acts for last year or for the previous year, for extra personnel to monitor security cameras.
But that's specific.
I'm sorry, Lee, what was your question?
Julie, in past years, didn't the committee interview or invite like HPD and DHCR
Oh, yes,
and
sure.
NYCHA to come and say what are their needs and what they would like to see in Community Board 8 to be able to do their job better for Community Board 8 residents?
yes, they definitely, and they've come in the past, and they've, because of the information that we gave them, we were able to advocate for them.
Right.
Took us many years, but their input is very valuable.
Right, because that's the way that we then know what we could ask, what the community board can ask.
Mhm.
I just want to remind you that you don't need to be constrained by the past. If you think it's important now, you should do it within the district. In other words, you really can't ask for a citywide HPD program, but you
No,
could.
no, that's David. That's why I said specifically to community board.
No, I know that, but I'm saying whether it was done in the past or not, doesn't really matter. If you think it's important, if the committee thinks it's important, then I think you should go forward with that kind of ask. And one thing that I think Ted needs to do a little bit more research on is the issue of the boilers, which was the high priority, but the reply that we got wasn't very helpful. And I think that's something that needs to be pursued, not here, not now, but does need to be pursued.
But the issues with the boiler, as Lee mentioned, became an issue because we did invite the various representatives so they can advise us that it was an issue. We could think anything is important, but unless we hear from the officials, we really won't know for sure and at what stage they are in obtaining either funding or work. I mean, what we think really doesn't matter unless we get the information from the NYCHA officials and all the other officials Lee is talking about.
Definitely, they are part of it, but I wouldn't limit yourselves to that. If you think it's important for housing within the community, it doesn't just have to be NYCHA.
No, that's an
because, for
example.
example,
but we're talking specifically about NYCHA, not anything else.
No, that's my point.
Specifically
No,
to
you're not.
NYCHA.
No, you're not.
Well, Lee's question was
These are budget
specifically towards
requests.
it.
These are budget requests for the housing committee
No, I
that-
wasn't
We know
talking
that.
specifically
We know
about
that.
NYCHA. I was using NYCHA
Yeah.
because Ted talked about
Right.
the boilers. But I'm saying have you interviewed invited HPD? I have to ask, Winifred Campbell, is she representing HPD? Because I know a Winnie Campbell. Winifred? She's not gonna.
Yes, Lee Chung.
Is this the Winnie I know?
This is the Winnie you know.
Okay, are you still at HPD?
I'm still at HPD.
Do you want to speak about what you feel HPD might need?
I'm not really prepared to do that this evening, but I
Okay,
will. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we don't want to open off the cuff discussions. We want to make sure that any people that are going to present are fully prepared to answer any questions. So
Right.
I don't
And
want
I'm
to
not prepared to do that this evening.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't want to put Ms. Campbell on the spot. What I will ask is possibly if she can come back to our next meeting and maybe address some of those requests, if that's okay with you. Ms. Campbell?
Yes, that is fine. Which request are you referring to?
In regards to what Ms. Chung had asked, if you have any budgetary asks or anything that we can help you with in our budgetary asks for fiscal year 2024.
Certainly. Thank you.
Thank you, Winnie.
You're welcome.
Ted, I would
Good
try
not
to get
seeing you.
gather that information before next month because you should have a list really coming out of this month. The two
It's
lists.
too late.
Well, no. It's not.
No?
It's never too late. I mean, you've got really till mid-April, but the whole idea was to have your preliminary lists of capital requests and expense requests tonight, so that you could prioritize them next month. Now you can add into it, but ultimately you want to take tonight's list, put a preliminary prioritization to them in next month, and then decide your final prioritization in April by April 20th. But you certainly could add to it, but I wouldn't wait to put the list together next month, or at next month's meeting.
Got you. Okay, so then we have to come together. We have to meet as a board for everybody to get, because there's still two other board members that are not present. So we want to make sure that they're also on the same page with us. If they have any ideas for the capital, for capital and expense budgetary requests. So Chairperson Spalter, are you still there? I think she had gotten up, I think. Oh no, she's left the meeting. Okay. I will speak with her. And I would ask that the members that are online now, Ms. Reyes and Margaret Della, if you guys can come up with a list of ideas that we can present. I would like to, let's see, maybe we can get together briefly for about a half an hour, maybe next Monday. But I would have to first talk to Laura to see how that can be done, or Pablo to see how we can make that happen. If you guys are available next Monday, just for a quick meeting, to have these ideas put on the table so that we can indeed do the prioritization piece in our next meeting in March. How does that sound?
Okay. Next Monday, I believe it's a land use meeting, but
It
we
is.
could also email. We can also email the information to you, because then I think by holding a meeting, you have to do a whole process, but I think emails, we could just send emails. Like our
Okay,
suggestions for you.
okay. Well, then if that's more feasible, then I would ask that you do that.
Okay,
Email them to me, and I would have to reach out to Ms. Pardo, and we also have a new member, Diamaris, who is joining us. So I want to see if she has any input as well. So if you can send that to me, then that'll be fine, and we can make that happen.
Do you want to set a turnaround deadline to you, like Friday or Monday or something?
Monday, by Monday. Yeah, we'll
Sounds
stick
good.
we'll stick with the Monday. So if you guys can have that to me by Monday, that'll be great.
okay, will do.
Okay. All right. Do any of our members have any other questions or concerns, Julie or Margaret, before we go?
The only thing I
No,
was going to
but
mention
thanks
is the other thing I was going to mention is that we, the Special Committee on Racial Equity had the Northwest Bronx Community and Clergy Coalition present at our last meeting, and they mentioned that their top concerns in the community in terms of housing, land use, and youth, or those are the three top concerns that they had, and so the two pressing priorities are the affordability and mental health as the top reasons for folks losing their homes. So I just wanted to see if you would be open to having a conversation with health and hospitals, and how we could perhaps have a conversation about mental health and its impact on housing. I think from some of the conversations that I've had with other community board members, folks are also concerned about, perhaps that there is domestic violence that contributes to families being destabilized and, losing their home or losing the security of being in their home, having to look, being displaced, etc. But I was just curious if that's something that you'd be interested in having sort of a joint conversation with housing and mental health experts.
Oh, we definitely can look into that. We know that you hear a lot nowadays in regards to mental health, as it pertains to the crime issue here in New York. But we know besides crime, we know that there are other issues that mental health, where mental health needs need to be addressed. So we can definitely work on that and have that conversation, because it is important, because we know that coming out of the pandemic, everybody was pretty much locked into their homes for quite some time, and that the rate of domestic issues had increased. So there's been a lot of tension, a lot of issues, the whole masking thing and the whole vaccination mandate. So I'm sure that there has been a lot of mental health issues that would like to be addressed. So I think that we can definitely have that conversation.
Okay,
Margaret,
sounds good.
Margaret, if I may ask, are you speaking of a joint meeting, a joint request for budget items, or both?
Definitely a joint meeting, joint budget items. I was thinking about that, but I guess just from a capital expense side of things, nothing came top of mind. But if others have something that strikes them as sort of a useful and germane ask, then I'm all for it. But I guess my initial ask was for the former.
Okay, so yeah, we can definitely, just, whenever you send me your email, just put that portion into the email, so we can review it and, discuss it further.
Okay, will do.
Thank you, thank you. So once again, I want to thank everyone. Before I go, is that everything? Or anyone else has anything to say before we go? Well, I'd like to thank everyone for coming, again to our meeting, for Chairperson Spalter, for coming through, for David Gelman, and of course, for our Housing Committee Board members. Thank you guys for once again dedicating your time, to being a part of this process and for making my job much easier. So on that note,
Ted, can you give me a phone call, please?
sure, I do not, I don't know where I have that list of,
Do you want to write
numbers?
it down?
yes,
718
uh-huh,
432
gotcha,
9292.
got you. I'll call you right after.
Very good. Good meeting.
So, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Margaret. Any second?
Second.
Thank you so
Julie.
much. Thank you so much, guys,
Thank you,
for
Ted.
a good evening. Have a great night, and I'll look to hear from you soon.